fourth step of this one is now sending a go double speed just temporarily to this sequencer, and then it's quite easy to cancel the Selena, just switch clock off, and then for this just added a delay. Hello there. Excuse me, just eating a lozenge. My name's Gary, and I think you know that. And welcome to another video about my Berlin School rack. If you recall, a few days ago, last week, I did a video called Making Tangerine Dream, which was using this setup or a similar configuration to create some key Tangerine Dream albums, and quite a lot of comments were along the lines of tell us about how you did this, how you did that, particularly on ratcheting and things like that. So I thought I'd do a video which sort of briefly explained the current setup of the rack, the thinking behind it, particularly the musical workflow, and also go into the things like the clocks, the ratcheting, sequencing, and a few other things like the sounds and so on. But this is mostly, I think, going to be focused on the sequencing and the clock side of this, which is designated, or sort of I structured it, really to be about performance. Just adjusting the headphone cable. So it's going to be sort of intro to the rack, a little bit about how the clocks work together, then into some of the things you can do with the clocks, the ratcheting and that sort of thing, and then step sequencing or sequencing the sequences, and then I'm going to talk about polymetric clocking, polyrhythmic clocking, and then probably at the end do some kind of mini performance. So let's just, I'm also going to use this on the main camera, this Pocket 2, just to zoom in on certain things, because I'm aware when you see a lot of people's videos, they've got this wide view of the rack. At least mine are not as wide as some people's. But when you start to get down to the nitty-gritty of functions within modules and things like that, it's nice to actually zoom in. So I'm going to run this pocket camera as a side pane continuously. There'll be moments where it doesn't seem to make sense, just sort of sat there doing nothing, but I just want to do this as one take to make the editing easy. And hopefully I don't do any dodgy or incorrect sentences when I'm explaining things. Probably will. I'll put something on the screen. So let's begin. I'm going to put the Pocket 2 down at the moment. Or should I point it at? I don't know. Let's point it up at the rack, just so that you might get a bit of a view. Just to explain the layout of the rack. So sound source is pretty simple. We've got a 3 oscillator Model D up here, which does a lot of the big sequence lines. We've also got a relatively new 3 oscillator Tiger Pittsburgh modular, which does more, even though it's analog, it does more digital type things, and more sort of modern sounds related to that, I suppose. I'm really getting to the wave folding side of the world. I've got a West Pest here, which is a single oscillator, but I can use it for drones and things. We've also got, just in terms of sound sources, obviously there's an oscillator on the NTS1 over here, which tends to double as a, not double, tends to be primarily a delay and reverb on here. We've also got two drum modules. I might pick up the Pocket 2 just to show you these. Let's make sure it's tilted correctly. Yeah. So we've got a BD808 tip top for kick, and we've got an Erica, which is 2 times a drum sample, percussion sample on this side. Other sound sources, that's kind of it. I mean, we've got, oh sorry, one of the main ones is Brains. So Behringer are producing a lot of clones of gear at the moment. Chaos, I won't go into on this session, is like a clone of Marbles, which is open source, and Brains is really a wavetable based sound source as well. So with those two particularly, and the clocks from this, which I'll do separately, we can create some lot more modern type things, whereas the Model D and the Tiger, sort of traditional-ish. Sequencing wise, we have the main old school sequencer, which is this 960 sequential controller clone. We also have the Akari. This is the main sort of pitch CV sequencing on the Akari. The 182 sequencer here is primarily used as for things like ratcheting and also sequencing the sequencers. What I mean by that, I'll explain it in one of the chapters coming up, but I can use one row for ratcheting, one row to actually control the tempo of the other sequencers and some of the gates. Other sequencing, we have the ARP, 2HP ARP down here, which is pretty basic. It's got a clock in, and then it just gives you a range of arpeggiated modes. I use that for the moment if I'm using this one to do other more complex things, just to feed into Brains as an extra sound source. Other sequencing, obviously we've got a sequencer built into this on its own sound, but there's a sequencer built into Westpest, and an arpeggiator as well, which I'll go through later when I'm talking about syncing it all together. So that's the basic sound sources and sequencing. Modulation, we've got some LFOs here, 4 of them, which are used constantly. So I sometimes use the LFO out of Model D, and I can use it out of the patch bay of the Tiger. And obviously I've got now a sort of quite a good modulation source in Chaos, which has got a lot of clocks and random LFOs and things like that. And I think that's kind of it. The other big thing is this mini computer called the Ornament and Crime, built in. I'm using Phaserville, which is the latest update to Hemispheres. And the nice thing about this is that it's got, you can have up to 4 things active. I've got a dual quantizer here, which is actually pitching the CVs out of the 2 main sequencers, and a Euclidean rhythm 2-channel, so that's feeding the kick and the drums module next to it. And again, we'll go through that in more detail in a second. Finally, we've got a bit of a mixer section. We've got a stereo 4-channel mixer here, the Dopfer A138S, and then over here a little tip-top mix-up. IntelliGel mix-up. I always get them mixed up because they're white sort of things, which gives me another 2 channels in. It gives me 4 channels, 2 monos, and another stereo if I need another stereo. Plus it obviously takes the mix from here, and then that goes out, bizarrely, all of that into this lowly NTS1, which audio-wise does a pretty good job. I'm doing get decent results from the audio going through these. Finally, just in terms of control, we have a key step here hiding underneath. I built this rack specifically so I can have a couple of keyboards underneath. And we've got a Q Nexus here, which has got CV, gate and CV. It's also got a MIDI adapter, but I tend to use this primarily for CV out, gate and CV to control various things that I need to. At the moment, I won't be using it for this session. Right, so that's an overview. Oh, sorry, just last thing, which I think you know, I've got 2 theremins. So I'm a bit of a theremin nutter. Is that the right word? And I've got, you know, professional theremins, but I got these 2, and they're doing quite well. I've just upgraded the aerials or the antenna, and getting much more precise results. I kind of want them to be musical rather than just gates and so on. Right, I think that's everything for the overview. So let's continuously go into, I think, the clocking. So like chapter 2, after the intro, is clocks. And I'll put title slides up and things. I have a bit of a cough. Right, so the main BPM at the moment is coming from the NTS1. So if I, hopefully you can see that. If I, you can see I can change the tempo here by pressing the Alt key and this control with one hand. So I sometimes do that mid-performance. And that feeds what I'm going to call clock number 1 and 2. So let's make sure you can see that. Yeah, so this 2 HP div, which is this module with the 2 flashing green lights, is a double clock divider. So you get one in, which is coming from the NTS1 main clock, and you can control the rate for each of them separately. At the moment, it's just playing effectively twice the BPM, because that spits out two pulses per beat. So effectively these are flashing at 230 beats a minute, because I set that to 115, if that makes sense. And I can control the rate of these manually by turning these controls or using a CV into the rates. Because these are the sort of master bass clocks, I won't, well, I'm not at the moment controlling them with CV, but presumably later I can use something like the Chaos to send random tempo changes if I want some crazy type stuff. But anyway, so we're going to call, the other thing I was going to do for this is also put up some charts which do basic schematics of how all of this fits together. So anyway, clock 1, clock 2 are currently running at the same rate. Should I do? Yeah, I'll do what the reasoning for this. So clock 1 for me is what I'm going to call the base, B-A-S-E, so root clock if you like, and that's feeding on into a mult here. The 960 on this patch cable, it's feeding the 182 Behringer, and it's also feeding the ornament and crime, particularly for things like percussion. So that's the only 3 for the bass clock, and that's effectively the rudimentary or the root tempo. The second clock, which I often, and you'll see in a minute, how it runs at a different rate. At the moment it's the same. Feeds, amongst other things, on this blue cable, a second clock divider. So it goes in here, and then we've got 2 more clocks. The little bubbles that stick out are missing on this one because I bought it second hand, but they are flashing at the moment at the same rate as the main one, just because I've set the rates like that for this opening. The top one is effectively the gates for the Model D. So this sort of dual cable, I say gates, what we're talking about. Yeah, I mean the gates for the envelopes. So we've got 2, one for the VCA and one for the filter, which is kind of what you have on synths. Over on the Tiger, it's the same principle. We've got two gates, triggers going in for the filter on the left and the VCA on the right. And that's the same thing here. We've got filter and the VCA, or the loudness envelope, you want to call it that. So anyway, back to this. So clock 3 is just feeding that one. And clock 4 is doing a few extra things. It's actually feeding the tempo of this sequencer, the Akari, and also the gates feeding the Tiger. So what does all that mean in practice? Well, let's turn up just the pulse for, remember this is what should we call it, the bass clock number 1 is feeding the ornament and crime, which is also feeding the bass drum. So if I turn that up, there's your basic pulse at 115. Sorry, I'm turning up over here. And the cough. And if we now turn up the Model D, in fact I won't pan with the pocket, I'll just assume you can see what I'm doing on the main camera. So the Model D currently is just being sequenced by this one with pitch, and you can add steps to it. So I've done a 4-step here, and you can hear the envelope is, the envelope meaning the clock 3 here, which is feeding the envelope from the Model D, is running at half speed. If I increase the rate of that, then we're now getting it matched up. So the pitch and the gate are operating separately, but they're now being triggered at the same time. The advantage of having separate, if you like, disassociating the pitch and the gates is that you can do things like that. We can make suddenly the triggers into the Model D half speed. We can divide it by 3. So I'm just getting rid of a bit of a nail sticking out there. So that's now divided by 3, and this is the way these rate things work. So we've got effectively 1 here, then we've got half, then we've got a third, and likewise if we go to the right, we're doubling, and now you can see how ratcheting sort of appears. But we'll do that in a second. So I just want to talk about the main clocks. So so that clock is driving the envelope of that one. The second clock here is effectively driving this sequencer. So I'm going to bring up the Tiger now. That's just on one higher oscillator. I've also panned, as you can see here, I've panned the Model D and the Tiger in separate sides of the stereo, so it helps you a little later when we get into very complex things. It will help you differentiate what's going on. So this is the Akari. It's just on a 3-step sequence. I can make it a 4-step sequence. So it's matching up, and you can see with this clock 4, which will make sense if I do the diagram. If I reduce the rate of that one, I've now actually changed the whole sequence and the gates at the same time. So you can see the Akari is now going much slower. And a third. And back to the same clock speed. So that's roughly, really this is the basic stuff, just in terms of how the clocks work. If I wanted, for example, to globally change the envelope on, using clock 2, if I increase the rate, I'm going to change hands, increase the rate of that one. So everything's doubled up now, the speed of the Akari and the envelope for the Model D, and you can hear that. And from a performance perspective, just to switch it back Generally I wouldn't be changing master clocks 1 and 2 because they do feed a lot of other things. Master clock 2, that's a probably better name than rudimentary clock. Master clock 2 feeds, let's just turn this down a sec, via this malt. Have you got that on camera? Sorry, I never know what the pocket's looking at. It feeds, obviously the blue cable, it feeds the double clock up here. It also feeds directly the ARP for brains. It also feeds the, as you'll see later, this sequential switch. Well, it feeds, one of the inputs in this one. It allows me to press a button and then it will automatically send a clock out of here, which is actually going to trigger the key step, or sync the key step, which is playing the Selena. So it allows me to have arpeggiators there. The other thing this second clock feeds is, I'm just checking it's still here. What's going on? Where's that one come from? Oh, sorry, yeah. Using some of these stackable leads, as well as feeding the ARP, I'm also feeding the brains trigger. So you can see this second clock is feeding 4 or 5 things, particularly when I take more things out of the stackable into, say, the sequencer here. So I don't want to be changing these 2 clocks too much, unless I'm doing big global changes across the whole thing. I tend to do some of the more clever stuff like polyrhythms and polymeters on the second clock. Right, okay, so that's the basic clock distribution. Obviously, as I did before, I can just press the tempo button on here and do global, whoops, have you got that? Global changes to the tempo as well. I'm just going to put it 115 at the moment because it's an easier way of adding dotted crotchet delays. So if I it sort of defaults, I'll show you what I mean by that. It defaults to full length on the second dial here, to giving that dotted eighths effect. Turn the delay off for a second. Right, so let's go into chapter 3. I'm going to run this continuously. It's going to be a bit of a mammoth one. I don't really want to edit this, so I'm just going to keep going, and it gradually get more and more complex, so keep following. So chapter 3, ratcheting and sequencing the sequencers. That's the title slide I just made up. Right, so ratcheting's pretty straightforward. So let's open up the Model D on a basic 4-note sequence, and just the kick in the background as a pulse. Right, so as you know, master clock is playing the sequencer, and this is controlling the envelopes of the Model D. If I drop it to half speed, double speed, we get 2 envelope triggers per note. Look at the notes going across there. I'm sure you can see them on the main camera. 3 notes. So we could have this, what would you call it, constant ratchet effect if we wanted. I'm not sure you would, it's kind of a bit weird. So ratcheting, all I'm going to do is take this second row here, and there's the output for it as a CV. At the moment they're all currently set to 0, but there's this left row. If I say, for example, on step 2, add a bit of extra voltage. Let's see if we can do it with the other hand so you see better. So I've just increased the voltage there. It's sent a temporary rate trigger to the div here, clock divider, and doubled the speed just for that one step. We can go 3 steps. per note, semi-quavers or whatever. It's not as attractive as say twos or threes for some reason. Anyway, the advantage of disassociating the sequences as well, because what I used to do in the past is I used to have the ratchets on this row, or these two rows for different things. But because I've disassociated it here, I can do some nice things now. I can actually, for example, make this 3 steps. What this will do is add a bit of complexity, because it's going to do the ratchet on the second step, but because it's not, you know, the 4 steps, it means that it's going to cycle through. I think I showed this working on Cherokee Lane when I was doing the Tangerine Dream thing. So if you listen, we could also change this to 5 steps, then we'd have a 3/5, so the ratchet would only repeat, would effectively cycle through all 5 and then back again. We can change that to 4 steps, and we can also have different ratchets. On the 4th step we'll have a double ratchet. And it's hitting, as you can hear, it's hitting each note separately. Because we've got the rate control here as well, we can also, for example, suddenly drop the overall rate to half speed. And that means that the ratchets are going to have only hit at certain times within the main rate. So you can hear the second one's hitting there. And it's not quite making it to the 4th one. If we did 2 steps, likewise we can go faster if we want double ratchet speeds. So let's just show that working so it makes more sense. So we've got double ratchets on every note now, because this is twice the rate. If we wanted 3s on just the second one. So you can see during a performance, let's bring a bit of hi-hats in just for the heck of it. For a performance, we can go from, you know, a sort of slowish sequence, and then increase the overall envelope rate. The note's going to be the same, suddenly increasing the intensity. A little bit of delay just to show you that working. So let's change the stereo for this one, so the Model D's on the other side now. And that's better on the other side for the delay. Just turn that down. So you can see what's happening there. Let's go for half speed. Sorry, normal speed, then half speed. So that's quite nice. The ratchet's hitting a different note each time and then cycling through the 5 notes here. Let's go back to 4 notes on this one. During a performance, if you let's make it 5 steps, you could have all sorts of ratchets going on different steps. So I've set 5 steps going here, always slightly different ratchet amounts, and I can just bring it back to 0. And then we're back to normal. And of course, all the time we can change the steps on this as well. So that's the advantage of this stepping. So I can, on the 182 here, which is controlling sequencer, if you like, I can change the steps just to 1 if I wanted. And to make life easier, I could do the global ratcheting, because everything's going to be affected by 1 step. Suddenly into super, you've got semi-quaver triplets. I say twiplets then, triplets. And we're getting into sort of Giorgio Moroder territory there. but that's another, again, a performance thing. Just go to one step and have global adjustment. Right, I'm going to turn down the Model D now, because the other thing that this 182 controller, what did I call it, controller sequencer, what's this cable doing? Put it out of the way. The controller sequencer, the second row doesn't do ratcheting. This actually controls the rate of clock 4, which is controlling the rate of the sequencer and also the gates on the Tiger. So what does this mean in practice? So let's just set this to 2 steps. Just make sure you can see it, 2 steps. We've got the Hikari going at a regular 4-step. Just adding a couple of oscillators on the Tiger, so a bit more bassy. I'll put the sequencer in the middle just so you can hear it. So what this control row here gives me, if let's not say on the second step, I'm going to double up the CV to the rate. It's going to speed everything up twice as much, just temporarily. Now got, let's say, an irregular sequence. So it's doing quaver, semi-quaver, 2 sets of semi-quavers. And if we go a bit more, we can get a bit crazy with the tempo. And again, like I did before, if I change this to 1 step and just change the rate on this top control, it's a quick way of doubling up the sequencer, which is feeding the Tiger in this case, via, of course, the quantizer down there. Anyway, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, let's go back to that. It's a nice way of, particularly when you've got a longer sequence, so I've now changed that to an 8-step sequence. We can, using this ability to change the tempo temporarily on this row, using the clock divider here, using this control row to control, make the sequences a bit more complex. So I've got this on 5 steps, this is on 8 steps. So on the 4th step of this one, it's now sending a go double speed just temporarily to this sequencer. And again, it's a performance thing in that you can turn it off and just add it, make it more complex as the piece progresses. Sequence less. Kind of works with bass lines. It's something a bit more bassy on the Tiger. So that's turn it off. So that's kind of what I'm using these 2 rows for. To do sort of more performance complexity. This side ratcheting for this sequencer, for the Model D, it's this is separate from the sequencer, and then this row for the speed and tempo of this. I can also feed this changing tempo from this mult over here to various other things around the place. And so that's kind of that aspect, the ratcheting and the control. So let's go into, I'm not sure where we are in chapters, chapter 4 I think, which I'll say is other sequencing options. Right. So as well as the 2 main sequencers, I've got this right, sorry, I just took my pocket down a bit. as well as this sequencer, the controlling sequencer, this sequencer, and the two main sound sources. We've got the Selena and the West Pest and Brains that we can also sequence. So let's just go through them. The easiest one is there's a clock going from clock number 2 to the ARP here, 2 HP ARP, which is feeding Brains. So if I turn Brains up, it's just on a super saw sound at the moment. Let's go something a bit softer so I can speak over it. I've also got modulation on the frequency, which I'll turn down. It's actually got this nice built-in attenuators as well. So you can see, as before, if I change the rate of clock number 2, it's going to change the speed of the ARP. If I put it back to the normal speed, all good. With the ARP as well, this is not really about the arpeggiator here. I can change the mode. I often have it in the random mode here. I can also change the chords. This is a bit of a beat, so you can hear it in time. So that's a continuous sequence going into that, because it's effectively a clock rather than a sequence. But I can take the feed, like I said, from something that has more steps in it. But primarily like I said, I haven't got it patched in for this talk. The chaos is going to make this a lot more interesting in terms of the rhythmic gates, because this can do random gates and things. So that's your basic sequence there. The other sequence is external gear, so the key step down here has got a clock going into it. At the moment, it's playing the Selena. I don't need to pan up to it, do I already, Gary? It's playing the Selena. But this has got a gate in, it's also got its own arpeggiator and sequencer. So a quick way of providing or making this work, because sometimes I'm playing like a pad. Let's put a bit of reverb on, just to make the Selena sound nice. And a bit of so if I hit that E major 7, E flat major 7 now, if I then want to go on to do something else, I can reach up and actually put it into trigger mode. So it's now receiving clock number, remind me where it's coming from, clock number 2. And the nice thing about the key step is that I can actually double the rates here, so it's a local control over the clock as opposed to this one, which is a global one. It's sort of offbeat at the moment, which is okay. And if and the reason for doing that is primarily just so I can have some kind of pad going. If I increase the sustain of the Selena, it sort of sits there in the background, and I can just go onto the keyboard, and let's go A flat major 7. And be doing other things, changing all the sequences and so on. So that's a nice touch. And if I then want to, just go to a breakdown section, or just lose the pad, just turn it off. And so that's an external clock, and that clock could control other equipment. And the other type of clock is on the West Pest. I'll say type of clock. I need to work out my intros into each section. So the other way I can use a natural sort of regular clock is to control the sequencer and the arpeggiator on the West Pest. I kind of use the West Pest mostly in either like a droney low notes and things with a bit of folding LFO, or I use it as lead lines. And this is why I have this keyboard here as well. Normally this controls that. But it's got a built-in sequencer, which I use occasionally if I need more stuff to do sequences, or I want a certain type of sequence that can't be handled by either the Tiger or the Model D. I can plug in a clock from this stacked clock lead here into the clock in of the West Pest, then switch it into sequencer mode, which is currently on sequencer. It's on ARP, sorry, so I need to actually press some keys. I just have to put it on hold there so it would carry on the beat. I had to update the firmware of this so that the clock worked properly, because I think the earlier versions it wasn't using the pulse properly on the way in. And this also has its own clock divider built in, so if you press the white key here and then this external clock division symbol, so that's now effectively the same tempo but offbeat, and that's now on a thirds divided by 3 divided by 4 and then back to the main pulse. So it's a good way of using this basic clock of perhaps doing a held chord. You could even combine that with the Selena chord, both clocked at the same speed, and those two could be excuse me, chunnering away there, while perhaps I bring in the main sequences. So this is the Model D going in here, and then it's quite easy to cancel the Selena, just switch the clock off, and then for this one just switch the sequencer off. So it's a good way of perhaps I'd use these to perhaps build a piece gradually, replacing them, and then I can take the clock out and then use this as a lead instrument. And right, so seeing what the Tiger's doing. Right, so we're going to go into the chapter 5. Are we up to 5 already? And then perhaps a mini performance. I did do a take prior to this where, when was it? Earlier, so it's actually midday now, so this morning I did one. Then actually this chaos arrived, so I actually put it in the rack. So I have got a performance that I may use because it demonstrates this next section, which is polymeters and polyrhythms. So this is kind of where the clocks start to make more sense for me. So here's your basic pulse. We've got clock 1 and clock 2 going at the same rate. I'm going to increase clock 2 to twice the rate. The effects that it's going to have on the envelope is obviously this. So doubling up each clock. If I make it half rate on clock 3, which is the envelope for the Model D, it's going to be the same tempo as the sequencer. If I change it to a third, we're now into polymeter territory, so we're actually getting it. We're getting it playing every. I'm just trying to work this out. So it'll be every three semiquavers. Just go back again. So that's quavers. That's 2 per beat. And now dotted semiquavers, or 3 semiquavers, which is giving that polyrhythmic effect. So what if I just switch it to get rid of the rhythm, because I want this to make, so get rid of the reverb, not the rhythm. The bass clock and the envelope clock are effectively doubling. That's 4 times the speed of that one. It allows me, when I go a third on clock 3, to create this polyrhythmic effect, where the kick drum is doing 3, and in the space of 3 on the kick drum we get 4 sequence notes. Hopefully you can hear that. That's 3. So imagine this is in triple time on the on the bass drum. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the complexity comes in when we start to add ratchets on the top of that, because if you listen to what this divided by 3 is doing on the sequence, it's actually, let's put some extra notes in so you can hear it. It's actually skipping some of the notes. If we increase the decay, and let's just increase the bass rate and drop down the drum to half speed again. So we're still getting the polyrhythmic effect, and you can actually hear it because this is triggering like there. In between these notes, we're actually getting a bit of slurring between notes. So I'm up here. And when we start to add ratchets in, this is where it starts to get interesting. We're actually going to get it sort of skipping to the pitch that it missed. It would have missed if it was on the divided by 3. Because this is going to make it divided by 1.5 effectively, just temporarily. Sorry, not 1.5. This is going to change the rate to the next step up. So suddenly it's going to go divided by 2. That's why it sounds sort of regular. Whereas the other envelope hits are on divided by 3s. Let's just go to 4 steps. So we're getting quite a nice groove going on there. Bit of delay for effect. And the more ratchets we add on this polyrhythmic scenario, the more regular it'll sound. Because of course this is pushing up the rate into the half, which is more sort of on the beat. When we go back to no ratchets, it goes back to the triplet feel. Likewise, it's to actually appreciate the effect of this sort of dotted semiquaver thing. If we add in a more traditional thing that's running at the normal clock speed, the Tiger. Pan it over to one side. I'll keep it in the high frequencies of the Tiger so that it's not interfering with the Model B too much. Increase the speed using this moment. So what I'll and then we can sort of go into performance. So if I want to, play some notes. So I'm trying to hold the pocket 2. I might just put it over here, tilt it up a bit. Adding a bit of modulation to one of the sounds. And then, like I said, if I want to hold a note, I can just switch the clock on temporarily for this one. And then bring in a solo on this, on the West Pest. Increase the kick drum rate to twice speed, so it just kicks into action a bit more. And now we've got control. The bass rates are fine, but let's increase the rate of the Model D. We can also send the Tiger, which isn't doing a lot at the moment, into triplet mode by adjusting its tempo clock. And you can see a completely different feel. Bring Brains in, I don't quite know what it's doing. So that's doing the the double speed clock 2 at the moment. The decay a bit less. Kick's going a bit fast, so let's go back to the half speed again. So if we got something going like this, switch out of clock mode for the Selena. Bit of a solo on the top. I'll put the hold on. Let's make the Tiger a bit more interesting. We can add in some jumps on the rate. Increase the length of that sequence for the Tiger. It's all getting pretty busy. Let's add some ratchets on the Model D. Okay, and when it gets super busy like this, we've now got master control over everything, so I can adjust the master clock here to suddenly go half speed. The only thing that's going to stay at double speed is the envelope clock, so I can also make that half speed. Let's get rid of the hold on that. It's a great way with these master clocks, quite close to hand, so with the left hand I could be doing all this. Just adjusting the rates. I don't know if that camera picked it up, probably, possibly. Let's just go up a bit. So yeah, I can go super slow on everything. So everything's slow down with these master clocks. I can make the envelope super slow, but still make the master sequencer clock faster. So the notes are going to be changing and the control sequencer, but the actual envelope hits are going to be quite slow. And this, remember, this second clock also controls things like brains. So, and if we have this something like a third of that one, we can get some pretty bizarre effects. Remember, these are constant clocks, and they're synced to each other, whereas this sort of marbles clone over here does more random clocks, which is for even more complexity. I'm gradually increasing clock 2 just to add more of the envelope hits in, and obviously it increases the rate of this sequencer on the Tiger. And we can build up the piece again. The advantage of having a clock divider is, as you can see, we end up going up in steps. So it still keeps a relatively same BPM, obviously the divisions of it. Versus, so I was talking about the steps, versus say doing it with the master clock, which has the effect, sorry, I'll show you that with this one, which has the effect of it being gradual. I mean, that has its place in a performance, of course, particularly if you want to gradually increase the speed. So imagine you're running at 103 for a while, get rid of the delay because it will make sense. So you're running at 103 for a while, and then you just want to gradually get a bit of a kick, you jump up to 106. Most listeners wouldn't notice these minor changes. You might only jump up by 1 or 2 BPMs, versus using the master clocks here. You can see this, particularly clock 1, which is going to control the rhythm. Put an LFO on the envelope if we wanted, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. The other thing we can do in combination with this, just for added complexity, is take the second row, which is feeding the Akari. Let's see what that's doing at the moment. So it's double speed because this clock here is running double speed. Let's run it at half speed, so then we've got a 2, sorry, I'm clocked here. Clock 4 is going to be running at half, and this one's going to be running at a third. The effect of them straight away is something very polyrhythmic. It's always hard to tell in these situations, sort of pure polyrhythm or polymetric. Let's just carry on. Then if we increase for a couple of steps, just make the sequence double speed. So steps 2 and 4, I'm making double speed, and you can see it happening here. Just making sure I'm on the right target in this camera. And again, we can, if we increase the sequence length of this one on the Tiger. obviously the delay set at dotted quavers is having an effect on the complexity. If we knock it off, it's still quite complex, so there's no delay. I'll even take the reverb off because people complain sometimes. And during this performance, we can line the clocks up, so we can look at clock 4 and then suddenly make that divided by 3 too. So we've now got 3 against 3. They're starting at slightly different times. If I take off the skip steps and also take off the ratchets, we can actually line them up. And get rid of the beat, and all of a sudden we're in triplet time. And that's just really clocks 3 and 4 controlling that. We can make the rate of the Model D sequential 960 half, so we then get the 2 against 3 scenario again. So 3 against 4. Should be on one side of the stereo, just tweaking it over here. Just change the Ikari into just 3 steps. And then on step 2 of this 5-step, step 2 is going to just double the speed temporarily. As we saw earlier, I could bring in the key step doing something. I've noticed the key step, because it's taking analog CV sync in and it's outputting MIDI to the Celine, there is a delay, so it's not good to use it really to use it rhythmically. It makes much more sense to use it in a sort of background pad way. So let's just let's simplify this back to the normal. Get rid of the delay. Get rid of the step jumps. Turn the, what should we call this? I'll call it the control sequencer. I think I need to give it a name for myself as well mentally. So this sequencer is controlling the other sequences or the other sequences. So they're all on 4 steps now. Resonance, right. The other thing we can do is, as well as the sort of polymetric feel, is to double up the sorry, just catching me train of thought. We can go the other way. So rather than let's get rid of that. Rather than, you know, fast complex things, we can reduce these bass clocks. Let's see what's going on here. Yeah, so reduce the bass clock. So we have, for example, bass clock running really slowish, like minus I'll divide it by 4. Let's just have a listen. And then having this one running at 4 or 5 times the speed, in this case it's probably running at 3 times speed, and this is running at, I think, divided by 2. So this is running super fast, so we can, on clock 3, we can do a lot with the division. Just need to do a minor adjustment on the base clocks. So I want to get it to the point where each step is going to have something like 8 on it, and then we can do some interesting things. This is more experimentation zone now, so it's really just seeing what we can achieve. So there we go, 6 on each step. And increase the speed of the kick. So this is just the Model D. If we ratchet that, we could end up with some crazy results. So let's see what the Tiger's doing with the Akari side. So that's still running on a sort of slowish traditional clock. All steps here. 4 steps running from this rate. So we can go for the divided by 3 again. So it's a bit slower than the last one. So in other words, the base clock is running like half speed, in which case we're getting much slower pitches on the Model D. Likewise, we're getting faster changes in pitch on the Akari. So you can see the clock 1 half speed. If we change clock 1 on the fly, it's going to affect the kick drum as well, the percussion. So just fine-tuning these, fine-tuning the ratcheting. And if we just want to change the amount of envelope attacks, we can get some nice steps. I think we've got let's just turn off the Tiger a second. So that's kind of cool. We got some nice syncopation going there, completely by accident. And this is the, I suppose, the unscientific part of this, just by fiddling with the base clock, the envelope clock, and then the divisions within the envelope clock. We can get some nice results like that. I don't think we've got any ratcheting on, have we? No. So that's getting a bit too close to Blue Monday type thing, but this is just a 4-step sequence. Let's make it a 5-step sequence just to add some complexity so it's not repetitive. added delay. The delay is working well with the basic normal speed, just quavers on the Tiger. If we make it 5 steps. So I've got all 3 oscillators going here. I haven't got any modulation on these because I didn't want to confuse things even more by having the sounds changing too much, just for this clock demo. Just adding a bit of modulation. So yeah, any questions or any corrections even more important, just shout in the comments below. And thanks for watching. Hopefully it made sense, and I'll do a separate video on more complex things using the Marbles Chaos thingy-majig, which is probably the last main addition to this particular rack, apart from probably perhaps something more on the sample loop thing. I think it'd be nice to have a loop ability with some of those.